This story is very meaningful. Everyone should hear it. Listen to Brian tell the story. I stood frozen in my Denver apartment, staring at the torn pieces of my father's will, scattered across the hardwood floor, like ashes from a fire I never meant to start. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from a rage so deep it felt like it could crack my ribs open. The words he'd written: "Olivia, you're the strongest one. I'm sorry I didn't see you sooner. Take care of the family," burned into my brain. Take care of the family? After 25 years of being invisible to them, now they wanted me to play savior? The audacity of it made my stomach churn, a bitter taste rising in my throat. I kicked the scraps of paper aside, my breath hitching as I tried to shake off the weight pressing down on me. But it wasn't just the will, it was the package that came with it. The one from the lawyer, the one that shattered everything I thought I knew. My father hadn't just left me a burden, he'd left me a lie. All those years I'd believed my grandmother paid for my college. It was him. Him sending money in secret while my mother spun stories to keep me tethered. I felt betrayed, used, and somehow still hollow, like a puppet with its strings cut too late. My name's Olivia Harper, 25 years old, the youngest of 5 kids born to a family that never had room for me. I'm not tall or striking, average height, brown hair that falls just past my shoulders, hazel eyes that people say look tired even when I'm not. I work as a graphic designer, freelancing mostly, because it lets me hide behind a screen and avoid the chaos of people who demand too much. I've built a life here in Colorado, far from the crumbling house in Ohio where I grew up. A life with Mia and Clara, my real family, the ones who saw me when no one else did. But that life was under siege now, and it started with a phone call I should have ignored. It was 3 weeks ago, a crisp November evening, when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I was packing for a ski trip with Mia and Clara, folding my favorite red sweater when I saw Mom flash on the screen. My chest tightened. We didn't talk often, maybe once every few months, surface level stuff like, "How's work?" or "Hope you're okay." I almost let it go to voicemail, but some nagging instinct made me pick up. "Olivia," her voice crackled through, sharp and weary. "What time are you coming home for Thanksgiving?" I blinked, caught off guard. Thanksgiving? We'd never been a holiday family. I could count on one hand the times we'd even tried. "I've got plans, Mom," I said, keeping my tone flat. "I'm going skiing with Mia and Clara. I live 2 states away. You know that." There was a pause, then her voice turned cold. "So that's it? You're just going to leave me alone? Your father's driving 2 hours to see David at the institution, and I'll be by myself." Guilt twisted in my gut, but irritation flared hotter. 3 days' notice, and she expected me to drop everything. "I can't, Mom. I've had this planned for months." She didn't miss a beat. "You don't care about us, do you, after everything we've done?" Then she hung up, leaving me staring at the phone, a mix of shame and anger simmering under my skin. I tried to brush it off. I texted her later that night, polite but firm. "I've got the ski trip through Christmas, but I'd love to catch up with you and Dad after New Year's." No response. Typical. I should have known it wouldn't end there. A few days after Thanksgiving, my phone buzzed again. This time a text from my father. Dad never texted. I braced myself and opened it. "If you don't come home for Christmas, I'm cutting off your college payments." I laughed out loud, a sharp, incredulous sound. College payments? I'd graduated 3 years ago. What was he talking about? I fired back. "I've been out of school for years, Dad. If you think you're still paying, check your bank account. Someone's scamming you." I thought that'd be the end of it. Maybe he'd realize his mistake and back off. But hours later, another text. "You're greedy and ungrateful. We sacrificed everything for you and your brothers, and you don't appreciate it." My jaw dropped. Sacrificed for me? I'd never asked them for a dime. Then it hit me. My grandmother had paid for my college, not them. She told me herself, said she didn't trust my parents to mess with my future. So what was Dad on about? I called Mia that night, pacing my apartment, my voice shaking as I vented. "They're losing it, Mia. Dad's acting like he owns me because of money he didn't even give me." Mia's voice was steady, grounding. "They're just mad they can't control you anymore, Liv. They want you back so they don't feel like failures." Clara jumped in on speakerphone, blunt as ever. Screw them, you don't owe them a damn thing. I wanted to believe them, but the gnawing guilt wouldn't let go. Then my phone vibrated again. Another text from Dad, short and icy. If you don't come home, don't bother coming back at all. I stared at it, my heart pounding, a numbness creeping over me. Disowned over Christmas? It didn't feel real. Part of me wanted to fire back, to scream about every time they had overlooked me, every birthday they forgot, every night I cried myself to sleep because I wasn't sick or broken enough to matter. But I didn't. I set the phone down, rolled over and tried to sleep, the weight of their words pressing me into the mattress. The next morning, my mother piled on. Her text was softer but no less cutting. "We're disappointed, Olivia. We don't understand why you're so distant. Please reconsider." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound, because distant didn't even scratch the surface. I'd been a ghost in their house my whole life, and they only noticed now because I wasn't there to haunt it anymore. I ignored it, focusing on the ski trip instead. Mia, Clara, and I left the next day, and for the first time in weeks I felt free. The mountains stretched out before us, crisp and endless, the cold air stinging my cheeks as we laughed and raced down the slopes. I didn't think about my parents, didn't feel guilty. I just felt alive. But peace never lasts with my family. Halfway through the trip, my phone lit up with another message from Mom. "If you don't come home soon, we'll have to make decisions about the future without you. Decisions you won't like." My stomach dropped. This wasn't about holidays anymore. This was bigger. I showed it to Mia and Clara over hot cocoa in the lodge, the fire crackling behind us. "What the hell does that mean?" I asked, my voice tight. Mia frowned, swirling her mug. "Sounds like they're planning something. Maybe about the house or one of your brothers." Clara snorted. "Or they're just trying to scare you into running back. Don't fall for it." I nodded, but the unease stuck with me, a splinter I couldn't pull out. Back home, I thought it'd die down. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, my brother Jake texted, "Hey, we need to talk." I hadn't spoken to Jake in months, maybe a year. He was the sibling I'd once thought might get me, the one less broken than the others, but he'd always been too wrapped up in his own life to care. I replied, "About what?" He called instead of texting back. I hesitated, then picked up. "Liv," he said, his voice low, urgent. "Mom and Dad have been talking about making you David's legal guardian when they're gone." My phone nearly slipped from my hand. My heart slammed against my chest, a mix of shock and fury roaring through me. "What the hell are you talking about?" I managed, my voice shaking. Jake sighed like I was the one being difficult. "You know how it is with them. They've got too much on their plate with the others, and they won't be around forever. They need someone stable to step up, and that's you." Stable. The word hit me like a slap. All my life I've been ignored because I wasn't a mess like Michael with his drugs, or David with his schizophrenia, or Sarah with her endless hospital stays. And now, because I'd clawed my way out of that chaos, they wanted to drag me back in. "So they just decided this without asking me?" I snapped, my grip tightening on the phone. "Yeah, pretty much," Jake admitted. "They've been planning it for a while." I sat there, staring at the wall, my mind racing. This wasn't just guilt trips or holiday drama. This was them trying to lock me into their mess for the rest of my life. "I'm not doing it," I said, cutting him off mid-sentence. "They didn't give a crap about me for 25 years, and they don't get to dump this on me now." Jake went quiet, then said, "I get it, Liv, I do. But you're still family." Family. That word made my blood boil. "Tell them I'm not interested," I shot back. "And don't call me about this again." I hung up, my hands shaking, my breath ragged. I felt like a cornered animal, ready to claw my way out. A few days later, a letter arrived, handwritten, from Mom. It was long, rambling, full of the same old guilt. "We need you, Olivia. Things are so hard for us. We don't know what we'll do if you don't help." But the last line gutted me. "We're not asking for much, just that when we're gone, someone steps up for the family." That's when it clicked. This wasn't about love or missing me. It was about tying up loose ends, about making sure their wreckage didn't crash without a cleanup crew. I crumpled the letter and threw it in the trash, my chest tight with a mix of relief and disgust. I was done being their pawn. Then came Sarah's call. I didn't recognize the number at first, thought it might be a client, so I answered. Hey, Olivia, it's Sarah, she said, her voice shaky. Sarah, my sister, the one I barely knew despite growing up under the same roof. She was always in and out of hospitals, a shadow I pitied but never connected with. Look, she went on, I know things are rough with Mom and Dad, but you need to hear this. They're not doing well. Dad's health is tanking fast, and they're freaking out because no one's stepping up for the boys. I froze, my stomach twisting. I'm sorry, I said carefully, but I can't just drop everything. I have a life too. Her sigh crackled through the line, frustrated. I get that, but you're the only one who can help. Jake's a mess, and you know how it is with me and the others. There's no one else, Olivia. My anger flared. So because I'm the one who got out, it's my job to fix this? That's not fair, Sarah. Her voice softened, but it cut deeper. I know it's not fair, but this is where we are. They need help. I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to scream. I'm not doing it, I said, my tone hard. They don't get to use me now just because it's convenient. She paused, then murmured, This isn't about you or me. It's about the boys. Who's going to take care of them when they're gone? That hit me like a punch, not because I felt responsible, but because it reminded me how trapped we all were. I'm sorry, I said, softer this time, but I can't. She hung up, her silence heavy with disappointment, and I sat there, torn between relief and a guilt I didn't want to feel. Another letter from Mom arrived days later, harsher, more desperate. You've let us down, Olivia, she wrote. I can't believe you'd abandon us like this. We've suffered so much and you're too selfish to see it. I felt that old shame creep in, the kind that had shadowed me as a kid. But then I remembered the years they'd forgotten me, every time I needed them and got nothing, and the shame turned to steel. I trashed the letter, my resolve hardening. The next day I blocked their numbers, Jake's too. It hurt, like cutting off a limb I'd never really used, but it was the only way to breathe. 2 weeks later, a knock jolted me from my quiet morning coffee. I opened the door, and there she was, Mom, standing on my porch, looking older, frailer, her eyes red-rimmed. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice steady despite the shock. We need to talk, Olivia, she said, stepping forward. I blocked the doorway, my heart pounding. No, we don't. I've said everything I need to. Her face crumpled, but she pressed on. Your father's getting worse. He's in and out of the hospital. We don't know how long he has. My throat tightened, but I held firm. I'm sorry, Mom, but this isn't my problem. You can't just show up and expect me to fix it. She stared at me, then broke into sobs, collapsing onto the steps. I'm not asking you to fix anything, she choked out. I just need you to be there. For the family. I almost laughed. What family? The one that ignored me for 25 years? That's not a family, Mom. That's manipulation. She wiped her eyes, anger flashing through her tears. We did our best. You don't know what it was like, keeping everyone alive while you were fine. I stepped back, my voice cold. That's not my fault. You chose to leave me behind. Now live with it. She glared at me, then turned and stumbled back to her car. I watched her go, a strange mix of sadness and freedom washing over me. I was done. A month later, Jake's email landed. Dad passed last night. Thought you should know. I stared at it, numb. I'd known it was coming, but I didn't feel grief, just a quiet void. Then the package arrived. The will, the letter, the truth about the money. It was too much. I tore it all apart, my hands shaking, my breath ragged, and stood there in the wreckage of their expectations, finally free, or so I thought. Here's the continuation of the story, picking up right where we left off. I'll keep weaving in the emotions, detailed situations, and new characters with dialogue as you requested, staying true to the script while expanding it. Let's dive back in. The pieces of Dad's will lay scattered across my floor, a silent testament to the chaos my family couldn't stop hurling at me. I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands, trying to process the whirlwind of the past hour. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped a chain around it and kept pulling. I wasn't grieving, not exactly. It was more like exhaustion, a bone-deep weariness from years of being their afterthought, now twisted into their last resort. The lie about the college money gnawed at me most. All those years, I'd clung to the idea that Grandma had been my lifeline, the one person who cared enough to give me a shot at freedom, and now even that felt tainted. Dad had funded it, secretly, while Mom played her games. Why? To keep some shred of control over me? To feel less guilty about forgetting I existed? I didn't know, and the not knowing made me want to scream. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, snapping me out of my spiral. It was Mia. I picked up, my voice hoarse. "Hey, Liv, you okay?" she asked, her tone soft but urgent. "You didn't text after the trip, and Clara's been pacing like a caged tiger over here." I managed a weak laugh. "I'm not okay. Dad died last night, and there's more. A lot more." A beat of silence. Then Mia's voice hardened. "We're coming over. Don't argue." I didn't have the energy to protest. 20 minutes later, they burst through my door. Mia with her calm, steady presence, curly black hair pulled into a messy bun, and Clara, all fire and sharp edges, her blonde pixie cut practically bristling with indignation. They took one look at the shredded paper on the floor and didn't need to ask. "What the hell happened?" Clara demanded, dropping onto the couch beside me, her green eyes flashing. I handed her the envelope from the lawyer, the one I hadn't torn up, and let them read the rest. Dad's letter, the will naming me David's guardian, the bank statements proving the college money came from him. Mia's brow furrowed as she skimmed it, her lips pressing into a thin line. "This is insane, Liv. They can't just dump this on you like it's your job to fix their whole damn life." Clara tossed the papers aside, her voice rising. "And what's this crap about college? They lied to you for years, and now they think you'll play dutiful daughter? I'd burn the whole house down if I were you." I rubbed my temples, a headache blooming behind my eyes. I don't even know where to start. I blocked them all, thought I was done, and then this. It's like they're haunting me from the grave. Maya sat on my other side, her hand resting on my shoulder, warm and solid. "You don't have to do anything, you know that, right? This isn't your burden." I nodded, but the words felt hollow. David's face flickered in my mind, his rare, lucid moments when he'd ruffle my hair and call me kiddo, the only one who ever seemed to notice me back then. Could I really turn my back on him? "I don't know," I muttered. "It's not just about them. It's about him, David. He didn't ask for this either." Clara groaned, throwing her hands up. "Don't you dare guilt trip yourself, Liv. They've been doing that to you your whole life. David's their mess, not yours." She was right, but it didn't stop the ache in my chest, the pull of a loyalty I didn't want to feel. That night, after they left, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Dad's handwriting, those shaky letters begging me to step up. I got up, poured a glass of wine, and paced my apartment, the Denver skyline twinkling outside my window. The city felt so far from Ohio, from that rickety house where I'd learned to disappear. I remembered the first time I realized I didn't matter. I was 9, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal, while Mom and Dad argued about Michael's latest overdose. I'd spilled milk all over my shirt, waited for someone to notice, but no one did. I cleaned it up myself, silent, invisible. That was my childhood, a series of quiet surrenders. And now they wanted me to surrender everything I'd built. The next morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won out. "Hello?" A woman's voice, crisp and professional, came through. "Olivia Harper? This is Karen Tate, your parents' attorney. I need to discuss your father's estate." My stomach sank. "I don't want anything to do with it," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. She paused, then continued, undeterred. "I understand, but there's a complication. Your mother's contesting the will. She claims you coerced your father into naming you David's guardian to gain control of his assets." I nearly dropped the phone. "What? That's ridiculous. I didn't even know about this until yesterday." Karen's tone stayed neutral. "I'm just relaying the situation. She's filed a motion. There's a hearing in 2 weeks in Ohio. Your presence would help clarify things." I hung up without answering, my head spinning. Mom was accusing me of manipulation after everything she'd done. I called Mia and Clara back over, my hands shaking as I explained. "She's lost it," Clara said, pacing my living room. "This is some next-level soap opera bullshit. She's trying to drag you back there, Liv. Don't go." Mia frowned, more measured. Or you could go, shut it down for good. Show up, prove she's lying, and walk away clean. I chewed my lip, torn. Part of me wanted to ignore it, let Mom flail in her delusions. But another part, the stubborn, angry part, wanted to face her, to end this once and for all. I'll think about it, I said, but deep down, I knew I couldn't let her rewrite my story. 2 days later, I got an unexpected visitor. The knock came late, after 9, and I opened the door to find Jake standing there, his lanky frame hunched in a worn jacket, dark circles under his eyes. My brother looked older than 32, like life had wrung him out and left him to dry. Jake, I said, stepping back wary, what are you doing here? He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my gaze. Can I come in? I drove all night. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He slumped onto my couch, staring at the floor. I'm sorry about Dad, he started, his voice rough, and about everything else. I should have warned you sooner about the guardian thing. I crossed my arms, my guard up. Yeah, you should have. Why are you here now? He looked up, his eyes tired but earnest. Mom's falling apart, Liv. She's obsessed with this hearing, thinks you are out to ruin her. I know it's crazy, but she's my mom too. I thought maybe you could talk to her. Stop this before it gets worse. I stared at him, a mix of pity and frustration bubbling up. Talk to her. Jake, she's accusing me of something I didn't do. She showed up here crying, begging, and when that didn't work, she pulled this. I'm done talking. He winced, running a hand through his messy hair. I get it, I do. But David, he's not doing good either. They moved him to a new facility, and he keeps asking about you. My heart stuttered. He's asking about me? Jake nodded. Yeah. He's got his bad days, but when he's clear, he talks about you, says you're the only one who never gave up on him. I turned away, my throat tight, memories flooding back. David teaching me to ride a bike, laughing when I crashed into the bushes. David sneaking me candy when Mom wasn't looking. He'd been my brother once, before the illness took him away. I can't, Jake, I said, my voice breaking. I can't go back there and let them pull me under again. He stood, stepping closer. I'm not asking you to take him on. Just see him, one time, for him, not them. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. You don't get it. Every time I give an inch, they take everything. I'm barely holding on as it is. He didn't argue, just nodded, defeated. Okay, I'll go. But Liv, if you change your mind, the hearing's next Thursday. And David's at Pinewood, an hour from here. He left, the door clicking shut behind him, and I stood there alone again, the silence deafening. That night, I dreamed of David. We were kids running through the backyard, the sun warm on our faces. He turned to me, smiling, and said, "Don't forget me, kiddo." I woke up gasping, my cheeks wet, the ache in my chest unbearable. I didn't want to forget him, but I didn't want to lose myself either. The next morning, I made a decision, not for Mom, not for Dad's ghost, but for me. I grabbed a blank card from my desk, scribbled a note. David, I'll always be your little sister. Stay strong. I drove to Pinewood, my hands sweaty on the wheel, the facility looming ahead like a gray fortress. I didn't go in, couldn't face him, not yet. I slipped the card into the mailbox and drove away, my heart pounding, a strange peace settling over me. It wasn't closure, not fully, but it was something. The hearing was 5 days away. I still didn't know if I'd go. Mom's lies, Dad's death, David's quiet plea. They swirled in my head, a storm I couldn't outrun. But for the first time, I felt like I could choose, not just react. Mia and Clara promised to stand by me, whatever I decided. And as I sat in my apartment, the Denver lights glowing outside, I realized something. I wasn't their invisible girl anymore. I was Olivia Harper, and I was writing my own damn story. Here's the next part of the story, continuing from where we left off. I'll keep building on Olivia's journey, deepening her emotions, fleshing out the situations, and introducing more dialogue and characters to keep it engaging, all while sticking to the script. Let's get back to it. The days after dropping off David's card blurred into a haze of restless nights and jittery mornings. I'd sit at my desk, staring at unfinished design projects, my pen tapping a frantic rhythm against the sketch pad. The hearing loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon. Thursday, just 4 days away now. And I still hadn't decided if I'd face it. Part of me wanted to march into that Ohio courtroom, look Mom in the eye, and dismantle her ridiculous accusation that I'd somehow manipulated Dad into naming me David's guardian. The nerve of her, spinning that lie after years of pretending I didn't exist, made my skin crawl. But another part of me, the tired, bruised part, just wanted to stay here in Denver, let her scream into the void, and move on with my life. I hated how she still had this pull on me, how her shadow kept creeping into the corners of my world. Mia and Clara kept me grounded, though. Tuesday night, they dragged me out to our favorite dive bar, the Rusty Anchor, a cramped little place with sticky floors and neon signs buzzing overhead. I nursed a beer, the cold bottle sweating in my hands, while Clara leaned across the scratched wooden table, her voice cutting through the hum of the jukebox. "You're not seriously thinking about going, are you?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "Your mom's full of it, Liv. She's just lashing out because she's got nothing left to hold over you." I shrugged, peeling the label off the bottle, my fingers restless. "I don't know. If I don't go, she wins by default, gets to paint me as the villain forever. But if I do, I'm stepping back into their circus." Mia, sitting beside me, sipped her gin and tonic, her dark eyes thoughtful. "It's not about winning or losing with her, Liv. It's about what you can live with. Can you handle letting her have the last word?" I didn't have an answer. The bar's noise, laughter, clinking glasses, some guy crooning off-key to a Springsteen song, pressed in around me, amplifying the chaos in my head. I wanted to be done, to wash my hands of them and never look back. But David's face kept haunting me. Those fleeting memories of him, the brother who'd once been my lifeline, hugged at something raw inside me. "Jake said he's asking about me," I admitted, my voice low. "David, at the facility, I can't shake that." Clara groaned, slumping back in her chair. "Great, now they've got you with the brother card. Classic move." Mia shot her a look, then turned to me, her tone gentle. "You sent him that card, Liv. That's more than they ever did for you. You don't owe him your whole life just because he's stuck in theirs." She was right. Logically, I knew it, but my heart wouldn't let go so easily. I took a long swig of beer, the bitter taste grounding me for a moment. I just keep thinking, what if I'm the only one he's got left? Mom and Dad screwed us all, but David, he didn't choose this. Clara leaned forward again, her voice fierce. "And you didn't choose to be their fix-it girl. They ignored you, Liv, for years. Don't let them turn your compassion into a leash." I nodded, but the conflict churned inside me, a tangle of guilt, anger, and a stubborn flicker of hope I couldn't snuff out. The next morning, I got a text from an unknown number. "Olivia, it's Karen Tate again. The hearing's been moved up to tomorrow. Emergency motion from your mother. Please call me." My stomach lurched. Tomorrow? Mom was pushing harder, tightening the screws, and I felt the walls closing in. I called Karen back, my palms sweaty as I gripped the phone. "What's going on?" I asked, skipping pleasantries. Her voice was clipped, efficient. "Your mother's claiming emotional distress, says your absence is proof of your intent to abandon the family and seize control remotely. She's asking the judge to void the will entirely and appoint her sole executor." I laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. "Abandon them? She's the one who showed up uninvited and started this. I didn't ask for any of it." Karen sighed, a faint rustle of papers in the background. "I know it's absurd, but she's got a decent lawyer and a sympathetic story. Grieving widow, overwhelmed mother. If you're not there to counter it, she might sway the judge. I can represent your interests, but it's not the same." I hung up, my head pounding, and slumped onto the couch. The absurdity of it, Mom playing the victim while I was the one dodging her traps, made me want to punch something. I texted Mia and Clara in our group chat. "Hearings tomorrow. Mom's gone full psycho. Says I'm abandoning them." Mia replied instantly, "She's desperate. Don't let her win." Clara's came a second later. "I'll drive you there myself and glare her down. Say the word." I smiled despite myself, their loyalty a lifeline in the mess. But I still didn't know what to do. I spent the day pacing, weighing my options, the clock ticking louder with every hour. By nightfall, I'd made up my mind. I couldn't let her rewrite the truth, Not for me, not for David. I booked a red-eye flight to Ohio, my hands shaking as I packed a small bag, a mix of dread and determination settling in my gut. The flight was a blur, turbulence rattling my nerves, the guy next to me snoring through it all. I landed in Cleveland at dawn, the sky a dull gray that matched my mood. I rented a car and drove to the courthouse in Akron, an hour away, my stomach knotted tighter with every mile. The building was old, all brick and stern columns, and I walked in feeling like a soldier heading to battle. Karen met me in the lobby, a petite woman in a sharp blazer, her handshake firm. "Glad you're here," she said, her eyes scanning me like she was sizing up my resolve. "Your mother's already inside with her lawyer. It's a small hearing, just us, the judge, and a clerk. Keep it simple. Tell the truth." I nodded, my throat dry, and followed her in. Mom sat across the room, her face pale and drawn. Her lawyer, a slick guy in a pinstripe suit, whispering in her ear. She didn't look at me, not at first, but when the judge called my name, her eyes snapped up, wide with shock, then narrowing into something colder. The judge, a gray-haired woman with a no-nonsense air, peered over her glasses. "Miss Harper, your mother claims you coerced your late father into altering his will. She says you've abandoned your family and seek to exploit your brother David's care for personal gain. What's your response?" My heart hammered, but I stood, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "That's a lie, Your Honor. I didn't know about the will until after Dad died. They named me David's guardian without asking me. I never wanted it. I've been on my own since I was 18, built my life without their help. My grandmother paid for my college, or so I thought until I found out Dad did it secretly. Mom's twisting everything because she can't stand that I won't come running back." Mom's lawyer jumped in, his voice smooth and oily. "Your Honor, my client's a grieving widow with 4 disabled children. Olivia's absence proves she's unreliable. Her father's wishes should be disregarded." I clenched my fists, anger flaring. "Unreliable? They ignored me my whole life. I was the kid they forgot because I wasn't sick or in trouble. Now they want me to clean up their mess, and when I say no, they call me the bad guy?" The judge raised a hand, silencing us both, her eyes sharp. "Mrs. Harper," she said, turning to Mom, "do you have evidence of this coercion?" Mom fidgeted, her voice trembling but defiant. "She's always been distant, Your Honor. She never cared about us, only herself. We needed her, and she left." I couldn't hold back. "You left me first," I shot back, my voice breaking. "I was 9, spilling milk, waiting for you to notice, and you never did. You don't get to need me now just because it's convenient." The room went quiet, the weight of my words hanging heavy. The judge scribbled something, then looked up. "I see no evidence of coercion here, just a family falling apart. The will stands as written. But Miss Harper, you're not obligated to accept guardianship. You can decline, and the state will step in for David." Relief flooded me, tinged with sadness. Mom's face crumpled, her lawyer whispering furiously. But I didn't care. I'd won, or at least I hadn't lost. Outside, Mom caught me in the parking lot, her voice raw. "You're really walking away? After everything?" I turned, my chest tight but my resolve firm. "You walked away from me years ago, Mom. I'm just making it official." She stared at me, tears streaking her face, then got in her car and drove off. I stood there, the wind biting my cheeks, feeling lighter than I ever had. Back in Denver, I told Maya and Claire everything over pizza, the warmth of their laughter washing away the last of Ohio's chill. But that night, I dreamed of David again, him smiling, saying, "Thanks, kiddo." I woke up crying, not sure if it was grief or release. I declined guardianship, but I mailed him another card. "I'm still here, just not theirs." Maybe that was enough for him, for me. So what do you think? If you've stuck with me through this wild ride, my parents' drama, Sarah's breakout, David's faint glow in the dark, what's it mean to you? Have you ever had to cut ties to find yourself? Or maybe found a family in the people who showed up when no one else did? I'd love to hear your take. Drop it in the comments. Spill your guts. Let's talk about it.